I do remember when I was 5 years old, as early as 5 years old, that I was different, that I never really talked to girls. I've always liked to have conversation with boys. I always liked to play with boys. In Vietnam, being gay is not really talked about, so I really never had anybody I could bring it up to. It was a shame for the family if one of their sons was gay, so I knew I couldn't talk to my parents. And from that point on, because of the culture in Vietnam, I couldn't do anything about it. When I was 10 years old, my family got the opportunity to move to America. Now, America is a lot different. America is more free. You're encouraged to be yourself. You're encouraged to express yourself. Even in America, I couldn't be honest about who I am. I would sometimes pray at night to God. I asked him, I have all these feelings for these boys in my tennis team, I have all these feelings for these boys in Sunday school, I have these feelings. When I look at these boys, it's one of those feelings where it's different. You just don't know what that feeling was. You just feel kind of a sexual attraction, you might say, but at the time I didn't know what it was. I just know that I want to get to know them better. But I couldn't act upon any of it because I didn't know what it was. I was afraid that they wouldn't talk to me. I was afraid that they wouldn't want to be my friends anymore. It wasn't until college the door opened. I went to UGA. It was far enough away from my parents. It was about an hour and a half away. I thought maybe here, they won't hear about things if I were to explore who I was. I still went back to Atlanta every single weekend and did stuff with my church. And the other kids at the church, they were also very open, more open, or so I thought, about prospects about gay people. So I thought to myself, well, if these young people are more accepting, maybe the pastor who was in charge of the children part of the church would be more accepting as well. So I went to confession. I went through a confession booth because I was afraid that they'll find out my identity and who I am. And I remember kneeling there and the priest asked me, have you come to confess your sins? And at that time, all of that thought, was going through my head. I remember the reason that I was afraid of coming out with the church was they always preach being gay is a sin, abortion's a sin, doing things against God's will is a sin. The Catholic Church is very good at making you feel guilty about yourself. When he asked me that question, it really was a moment of identity crisis for me. What I thought it was like a few hours, it must have been only a couple of seconds. I remember telling him that I think I like another boy, and I don't know how to think. I don't know how to move forward. He took a deep breath and he said, well, there are things that are laid out in the Bible about homosexuality, about sleeping with other than a man. So he asked me, have you done anything with another boy? And I told him, no, but I've had these thoughts for a long time. And I've tried praying about it. I've tried asking Jesus for guidance. I've tried, keeping busy so I don't think about these thoughts, but it always comes back. I get these pang, almost like heartache feeling, like as if something's stabbing through your heart. It's like, that you can't do anything about it. But I told him, I have these feelings for these boys and I don't know, I don't know what they are. And so he told me at that time to do 10, Hail Marys, to do all these different prayers, think about it, thank God for everything that happened in my life and that I haven't acted upon my sin. But he also told me that to come to his office after the confession, or at any point he wanted to talk, then he wanted to talk to me in his office. And so, coming out of that confession booth, I'm as confused as I always was. But that was the first time I actually said out loud to myself that I like these boys. Although I was talking to the priest, I actually confessed to myself. And then about a month later, I went to his office. At that time, he told me, I understand that you have these feelings for these boys. You have basically 3 options in your life you can take to be a devoted Catholic. You can either live your life, never act upon your impulses, and live the way of the Lord, be devoted to the church, and just never act upon your impulse. Or you can get married to a woman and realize that this might be just a phase for you, that because you've never been with a girl, that maybe that's why you're having all these feelings. And 3, you can dedicate your life to God. After we've talked about it a couple of times, I told him, well, what if I don't want to do any of that? What if I want to explore who I am? What if I want to be with another boy, live with another boy, marry another boy? I remember he said to me, well, the words of God is very clear on homosexuality being a sin. And if you are going to choose to commit sins, that you will no longer be welcome at the church. It scared me. You know, from the only stable thing beside from my family going from Vietnam to America was church. And the entire week following that Sunday was just a avalanche of emotion, one after another. It's like, now he knows what's gonna happen. Is he gonna tell my parents? What am I gonna do? Have you ever felt like you hit rock bottom? Have you ever felt like you don't want ever to take care of yourself? And it was this turmoil of not wanting it to be true, because I couldn't imagine a life different than the one that I had. When I told my twin brother, it's like, hey, I think I might be gay. And this was when I actually used the first word when I was talking to him. And he looked at me and he said, oh, I know. And I'm like, what? How did you know before I even knew? He said, you remember when we were 12 in California and we shared a computer with the family? I've seen your stuff on there. I went from being scared and angry and I guess all this turmoil feeling to like surprise, and also was like guilty. It wasn't bad guilty. It was like, you've seen my what? But that was the first time I actually felt genuine joy that this person is in my life, because I've always locked feelings away. I've always preventing myself from feeling love or feeling happy because of somebody is in my life, because I was afraid that that would out me. And I told him, you know, like, I don't want you to tell anyone. I don't want you to tell mom and dad. And he said, you know, that's between you and me, and know that you always have my support. And it felt really good to hear that from your brother. And I told him, hey, maybe I could start with telling my friends, and maybe talking to the Vietnamese Student Association president at Emory. His name is Phúc. And he said, hey, you know, Phúc is gay. So maybe if you talk to him, maybe he can show you, you know, where other gay people might be. Maybe you can hang out with them. And maybe that's where you might feel more comfortable. That weekend following that, I remember we going back to Atlanta and we made plans to hang out with Phúc. I told Phúc, hey, you know, I think I might be gay. How did you come out? You know, how did you approach your parents? And he basically said, you know, what's the worst that could happen? They kick you out, you learn how to live on your own, you learn how to thrive. It gave me some confidence in me, where I think to myself, well, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can try to come out. I felt good about myself. I felt like maybe I can approach this topic with my parents. And in my mind, in the back of my mind, I thought, my birthday's coming up. We're gonna do a family thing. My mom's gonna want to me what's going on. I haven't been back home for the last 2 weekends. And maybe I can tell her then. Maybe I can tell him, hey, you know, I've had this question for a while. I've had these feelings for a while. And what's the worst that could happen?